All right, Kevin McCarthy ousted as Speaker of the House in a historic vote. I'm Kana Whitworth here in Los Angeles. In today's big story, chaos on Capitol Hill. Kevin McCarthy is out. Matt Gaetz and other Republicans voted to remove him from the speakership. North Carolina Republican Representative Patrick McHenry named as Speaker pro tempore. And I will speak with Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Brad Schneider, about all of this fallout. And of course, we start with our big story here. The House has voted to remove Republican lawmaker Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. It's the first time in U.S. history that a speaker has been voted out. Republican Matt Gaetz, who filed the motion to oust McCarthy, spoke shortly after the vote.
Kevin McCarthy went down today is because nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has made multiple contradictory promises, and when they all came due, he lost votes of people who maybe don't even ideologically agree with me on everything.
This comes as Congress now has little more than a month to avoid a government shutdown. So joining me now is our Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Brad Schneider. Congressman, thank you so much for being here with us. And, you know, you're on the record as saying, look, McCarthy got himself into this. Essentially, he has to get himself out. He got no Democratic support today. Tell us about your vote.
Well, I think you've seen over the really last 9 months, Kevin McCarthy has made promises to the extremists in his conference and followed their lead and been unwilling to work with Democrats. Democrats have said from the very beginning that we're willing to reach across the aisle to work with Republicans to find common ground, to address the challenges we face as a country. We're going to stand up on the issues we disagree with them, but we would work together. We've stood up and fought to make sure we didn't default on our debt. New Dems, I'm a vice chair of the New Dem coalitions. We helped lead that way, and we kept the government open or out of default. We said we would fight to make sure that the government didn't close, but that we didn't cut programs that people depended on to just get through their daily lives. And I'm grateful that we were able to keep the government open on Saturday. But that was not the solution. That was buying time. We need to use that time in a constructive way. Unfortunately, what you saw today is that instead of using that time, the extremists in the Republican Party decided to vacate the chair.
And so if it's not McCarthy now as Speaker, then who? I mean, are you concerned now about what it means to vacate this speakership and how things will fail to keep rolling there in Washington or to even start rolling at all?
Well, of course I'm concerned. I think Democrats have stood united and said we're willing to work with our Republican colleagues to do the important business of the American people. It doesn't matter if it's McCarthy or whomever the Republicans pick. They're in the majority. They have the right to choose who they want as their leader and ultimately as Speaker. Democrats have said if we were given the prerogative, we would select Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker. I think you'll see that we stand united going forward, united to work for our constituents, work for the country, but also willing to work with the Republicans wherever we can.
And you say you're willing to work with Republicans wherever you can. Is that really true? And is that part of the Democrat strategy?
Oh, it's certainly true. I mean, you can just point back to the Fiscal Responsibility Act that passed in May. It was an agreement between Kevin McCarthy and President Biden. It passed with 165 Democratic votes, 149 Republican votes. It laid out a pathway that we wouldn't be in the situation we are today to fund the government, to do it in what's called regular order, passing the 12 appropriations bills in a methodical way, bipartisan way. You saw that effort in the Senate. Unfortunately, then Speaker McCarthy chose to abrogate that agreement almost immediately. But Democrats along the way have said we will work together when we were in the majority. We did it on the infrastructure bill. We did it on the PACT Act, on the Chips and Science Act. We will work with Republicans anywhere we can, but we will always stand up where we have to.
Well, certainly there are a lot of Republicans that don't support that fiscal responsibility bill, including Matt Gaetz, who even has a bit of a pet name for it.
Sure, but you saw 314 members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, come together, a majority in the Senate come together, pass that bill, send it to the president's desk to be signed into law. We had a path to work together and make sure that we were funding our government, but more importantly, doing the important work of the American people. What the extremists like Matt Gaetz, they're not here to legislate. Your earlier guest, my good friend John Katko, said they're not here to pass laws or to improve people's lives. They're here to make press, and what you saw again today is Matt Gaetz is raising money on his motion to vacate.
There are a lot of Americans right now certainly questioning the performative nature of what is happening in Washington right now. But, you have said yourself that you want to protect Social Security, Medicare, U.S. national parks. But Congress is still racing to even get this spending bill. So now that McCarthy is out, will you have the same problems, do you think? Or do you think you might be able to accomplish a little bit more?
We'll see. There's a saying that there's two types of horses. There's work horses and show horses. Today, the show horses had their way, like Matt Gaetz. My hope is that the work horses, like my colleagues in the New Democratic Coalition, working together across the aisle with perhaps folks in the Republican governance group, we can come together and find common ground to move forward, to fund the government, but more importantly, to make sure that we're working on the challenges we face going forward, challenges like addressing climate change, growing our economy and tackling inflation, addressing immigration and border security. There's plenty of common ground on these things if we work together.
And, now that we have this speaker that will temporarily be serving here, North Carolina Republican Patrick McHenry, with all things considered right now, with him in that post, what will the Democratic Party prioritize?
Well, we're going to watch and see what the Republicans do. They do have the majority. Our priorities have been consistent throughout. Help working families, make sure kids are getting the education they need to succeed in the 21st century, working to make sure that health care is available to all Americans, whether they live in large cities or in rural communities. We know the challenges that are in front of us, and we know the only way to move forward in a time-tested way is to do it in a bipartisan way. So we will work with our colleagues on the Republican side. They just have to be willing to work with us. What we have seen time and again is until the 11th hour, there's no willingness to put something that can get the votes necessary to pass on the Republican side. And even then, and you saw it with then Speaker McCarthy's comments on Sunday, rather than saying, I'm glad we moved forward and did it, Republicans and Democrats hand in hand, he says, I'm not going to work with the Democrats, and the consequences are that we'll have a new speaker.
You've said you're willing to work with Republicans and that you want to do that. Let's talk about military aid alone. The U.S. has provided nearly $44 billion to Ukraine. There is currently no additional funding to Ukraine in this new spending bill. Is more aid to Ukraine something that you're willing to give a little on to get this through?
Well, I think there's a consensus among everyone in Congress, both the Senate and the House, that we need to support Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are fighting for their independence and sovereignty, but they're also fighting for the Western world. If Vladimir Putin succeeds in taking Ukraine, then we have American troops on the borders in Poland and the Baltic states. The investment in Ukraine is just that. It's an investment in American security as well as Ukrainian sovereignty. And so we can't let that lapse. We have to make sure that the Ukrainian people know that we stand with them, and we'll be with them as long as it takes to secure their nation and their future.
Of course, all of this is happening during this ongoing auto workers strike. It has cost the U.S. economy billions of dollars. Union members are upset about pay disparity and the risk of losing their jobs to EVs. So you and some of your Democratic colleagues introduced this bill early last month to invest in the workforce. Where do things stand with that right now?
Well, hopefully we can move bills like that. Our workforce is our secret sauce. American economy has grown because of the workers that have driven the productivity over the last century plus. We invent things here, we make things here, and then we ship them around the world. And that is everything from high-tech chips, the American, we passed last year the Chips and Science Act. It's our cars, it's our machinery. It's the things that the world is looking to the United States for. We need to continue to make those products. But the workers who build those products, who invent those products, those workers need to share in the prosperity that is coming to our country as a whole.
All right, Representative Brad Schneider, thank you so much for your time on this very busy day. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, I want to now bring in our panel for our big story. So joining us today is ABC News contributor Mike Muse, president of Next Gen America, Christina Sinsoon Ramirez, ABC News contributor and former Republican representative for New York, John Katko, and ABC News contributor LZ Granderson. Thank you all for being here with us. And of course, Congress in the middle of figuring out the spending bill to try to avoid a government shutdown. But now they've voted, of course, on the future of Republican Representative Kevin McCarthy's speakership. And so, John, let's start with you. In fact, Mr. Schneider even referenced you during our conversation. You heard from him. Are you surprised by what he said? And do you think that really that Democrats are going to reach across the aisle and start working with Republicans anytime soon?
Well, listen, both sides say they want to, but the proof is in the pudding. Kevin had an opportunity to have a deal with Hakeem Jeffries, and he chose not to pursue that from all accounts. And the Democrats, really, this isn't their fight, and I don't blame them for sitting on the sidelines on this one. But, you know, like you said in the previous segment, the American people are just really sick of this nonsense and they're sick of the dysfunction. With everything going on in this country right now and all the hardships on the average family, why this has to be taking place as opposed to fixing some of the systemic problems we have, it's really very troubling. So going forward, it would make a heck of a lot of sense to start working with the other side. Ronald Reagan's mantra of "I'll take what I can get now and keep working on the rest" is anathema to the far right thinking in this country and the far left, for that matter. And that is something we need to get back to. We really want to start progressing. But make no mistake about it, people like us that were in Congress that lived in the middle got the crap kicked out of us on both sides because no one wanted to tolerate compromise anymore, and that's a real problem in this country.
Yeah, and we can't tolerate compromise. We can't move forward with any legislation. And you hear a lot of Republicans reminisce fondly about the Reagan days. Mike, coming to you here, what do you make of Matt Gaetz? Of course, he's the man leading this rebellion against McCarthy. He's been accused of being performative, yet he had the votes to do this, Mike.
He absolutely did. It comes down to this process that shows the weakness that Speaker McCarthy had as Speaker of the House. Part of the job as Speaker of the House is to be able to whip the votes, to count the votes, to know where the votes are before you pass any type of policy legislation. So the mere fact that McCarthy didn't see the numbers coming, that it wouldn't fall his way, that he didn't do anything that Katko said was to work with the Democrats to see if a deal was actually placed, shows the ineptitude that McCarthy had on being a whip, which is significant when it comes to that. The challenge is going to be within the Republican Party tonight. They have to do some soul searching. They have, as a result, have allowed the MAGA wing of the Republican Party to create a stronghold over them. It's even what Kevin McCarthy said in his statement by saying he has 99% of his caucus in his favor. It's just the 1% who did not favor him. Think about that, Kana. 1% of his caucus can put not only the speakership to become vacant, but to hold the business of the House in peril and to paralyze it without going forward. That is very powerful. And it really stems from the Republicans not checking the type of rhetoric and tone of the extreme right. And so as a result of that, they actually empowered them to do exactly what they're doing, Kana. Matt Gaetz has been consistent to who he is, and he has never been checked on that type of language, on that type of policy style and politics. And so they're essentially an effect of what we're seeing.
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much. And LZ, let's bring it over to you. You know, we heard Matt Gaetz earlier yesterday talk about his conversation with Trump. We heard him talk about it again today. And he says after his conversation with Trump, he has confidence that what he is doing is the right thing. So as you watch all of this unfold and Trump's, you know, in a courthouse in Manhattan, what is standing out to you about this today?
What is really standing out to me today is that the son of the President of the United States had to plead not guilty in court, and Republicans who've been fighting so long to get this moment to happen can't even talk about it.
Right.
That's what stands out to me. Like, this is such a self-own that even if Matt Gaetz wanted to do it, couldn't he at least wait until Hunter Biden said, "I'm not guilty," so they had something? Like, it is such a poor example of political awareness from Matt Gaetz's part. Kevin McCarthy, he just wanted the speaker's job. We all know that. We're all saying the same thing over and over again. Whether or not he tried to reclaim it again doesn't really matter. What does matter is that the Republicans shot themselves in the foot. They've been banging and banging and banging, talking about Hunter Biden. Here was the moment, but because of Matt Gaetz and 7 others, we're not talking about it.
Right, you're so right, LZ. They had that huge talking point today, and you saw Matt Gaetz try to throw that in there in his conversations with reporters there on the steps. He tried to bring up that plea, and he tried to bring up the Republican leadership's failure to pursue a case against Hunter Biden, and then you start to see it unfold today, and Republicans almost missed that moment. That's excellent to point out there, LZ. And Christina, to you, do you have a response to that?
I mean, what we're seeing are just, you know, I think everyone has said these are self-inflicted wounds by a Republican Party that has been kowtowing to the extreme MAGA Republicans in its party. And because they have not been willing to stand up against basic affronts of the MAGA extremists on democracy, on the rule of law, that now the extremists have control over the entire party. So this is a self-inflicted wound by Kevin McCarthy, who was unwilling to stand up to them, who failed in his position of leadership. And look, what I think the American people are seeing is that, yes, a shutdown was avoided for 45 days. And instead of using this time to figure out how we're going to move our government forward, how we're going to make sure that the military continue, servicemen and women continue to be paid moving forward, that the people that clean our offices, that take care of our children, that do all kinds of work across this country to make our country run effectively, they haven't been spending their time figuring out how they're going to continue to pay for that and keep our government open. Instead, they're fighting with each other. All the American people see is a Republican Party in chaos, and I think that's what we're going to see moving forward from them.
And John, I want to bring this to your attention here. We just got a statement here from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, and part of his statement is that he says, at the end of it, he says, "I hope it is that traditional Republicans will walk away from MAGA extremism and join us in partnership for the good of the country." John, do you have a reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I did that when I was in the House repeatedly, and that's why I said, you know, I routinely got attacked from both sides. And that's what governing should be about. It's not about getting reelected, and it's certainly not about self-promotion. It's a solemn responsibility to go to Washington, D.C. and represent more than 700,000 people. And if you go there for anything other than that, representing them, then you've got a problem. You know, Matt Gaetz literally has a fundraising page off of what he's doing right here. If he was very serious about this motion to vacate, he wouldn't try and profit from it. And it just goes to show you that the intertwinement of self-advancement and politics is so great right now. And extreme elements are on both sides of the aisle are really the ones that are hijacking the process. And maybe this will be enough for the Republican Party to serve notice to those extreme elements that we're not putting up with this anymore. We're going to change the rules. We're not going to have one person create chaos. Don't forget, 8 people out of more than 210 people on the Republican side were the ones who managed to take out Kevin. Nobody else, not the other 200 some odd Republicans. So we've got to fix the process, and we've got to start doing things working across the aisle, just like all the great leaders of the past have done.
Right, the 7 plus Matt Gaetz, John Katko. Thank you so much, Mike Muse, Christina and LZ. And I want to mention here again a little bit more of that statement, if I can, from House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. He also said that House Democrats will continue to put people over politics and work together in a bipartisan way to make life better for everyday Americans. All right, we will stay on this story, so thank you so much for streaming with us. I'm Kana Whitworth, and you can follow ABC News Live on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and more. And coming up here at 7 p.m. Eastern, be sure to catch ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis for the day's biggest stories and the impact they have on you. The news never stops, and neither do we. You can keep it right here on ABC News Live.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.